1954. A dinner party in Pasadena. The hostess has been cooking since 2 in the afternoon. The table is set for 8. The first guests arrive at 7:05. Not at 7. Not at 6:58. At 7:05. This is not coincidence. Every woman at that table except one newcomer who will be quietly corrected by her mother afterward knows that arriving exactly on time to a dinner party is an act of rudeness. The hostess is not ready at 7. She is ready at 7. The 5-minute grace is not casual. It is the thing that makes hospitality possible. This is one rule. There are 11 more. None of them are written anywhere. All of them were known. Social etiquette in the 1950s was not a performance of class aspiration. It was a functional system. Its rules existed because social occasions are inherently complicated, because people bring their anxieties and their egos and their hunger into the same room and sit down together, and without a shared framework, the friction accumulates. The etiquette rules of the 1950s were the accumulated wisdom of generations of women who had worked out, through trial and error and occasional disaster, the practices that made social occasions run smoothly. They were transmitted, as most useful knowledge was in that era, from mother to daughter, over time, in practical settings. Most of it was gone by 1980. Here is what it covered. Rule 1. Arrive 5 to 7 minutes late to a dinner party. Never on time, never early. The host is not ready at the stated hour. The stated hour is a target for readiness, not a moment of arrival. Arriving early puts the host in the uncomfortable position of greeting you before. The house is quite ready to receive you. Arriving exactly on time is only marginally better. 5 minutes allows the host to be genuinely ready. 7 minutes is the maximum grace before the host begins to wonder. This rule appears in every women's etiquette publication of the 1950s with such consistency that it was clearly considered foundational. It is now almost entirely unknown. Modern guests arrive at the stated time or worse early and wonder why the hostess seems harried. Rule 2. The specific compliment. Women in the 1950s were taught that compliments should be specific and singular, not "what a lovely home you have," which is a formula that carries no information, but "that centerpiece is extraordinary. Where did you find those dahlias?" The specific compliment tells the recipient that you actually looked, that something particular caught your attention, that you are present and engaged rather than performing the social script. A woman who gave specific compliments was remembered as warm and attentive. A woman who gave only general ones was remembered, if at all, as pleasant. The distinction between memorable and merely pleasant was considered important. It required only the habit of looking before speaking. Rule 3. Never refuse food in someone's home. This rule was stated plainly in etiquette guides and in the practical instruction mothers gave daughters before they began attending social occasions. When a host offers food they have prepared, refusing it is a rejection that the host feels personally. The 1950s solution was to accept a small portion and leave some on the plate. Eating a small amount of something you dislike was considered well within the range of social courtesy owed to a host. Saying no thank you to a dish the host is proud of was not. There were exceptions stated for genuine medical restrictions. For everything else, you took the serving, ate what you could manage, and complimented the effort. This protected the host's dignity and cost the guest almost nothing. Rule 4. 3 topics were never discussed at the table: money, illness, and politics, not because these topics were unimportant. Because the dinner table was a social occasion, not a debate floor or a medical consultation, and because these 3 categories of conversation are particularly susceptible to producing the kind of friction that leaves guests feeling worse at the end of the evening than they did at the beginning. The rule was not squeamishness, it was situational discipline. A woman who had strong opinions about money or politics kept them for conversations where those opinions would be welcomed and examined rather than deployed over other people's food. The dinner table was for connection. The difficult conversations had their own occasions. Rule 5. The written thank you within 24 hours, not 48, not eventually. Within the day following any occasion where you were hosted, fed, or given a gift. The 1950s thank you note was not optional, and its timing was not flexible. A thank you note received 3 days after a dinner party conveyed that you got around to it. A thank you note received the following day conveyed that the evening mattered to you and that you thought about it on the way home. It required a box of plain note cards and a stamp. It took 4 minutes to write. It was one of the most consistently cited practices in women's etiquette writing of the era as a differentiating act of social character. The woman who wrote promptly was remembered. The woman who meant to write was not. Rule 6. Remember one specific detail about every person you meet and use it the next time you see them, not their name alone. One thing they told you, one project they mentioned, one concern they expressed. A 1950s woman who encountered an acquaintance at the market and said, "How did that garden bed come along? The one you were worried about the drainage," had done something that felt like a small miracle to the recipient. She had remembered. She had paid enough attention on one ordinary afternoon to recall a specific small concern. Women who practiced this habitually were described by people who knew them as making everyone feel important. They were not performing warmth. They were practicing a discipline that produced warmth as its byproduct. Rule 7. Leave before you are ready to. The 1950s rule for departing a social occasion was to leave at the moment when the evening still had energy, not when it had exhausted itself. You did not stay until the conversation had died. You left while it was still alive. This was considered a courtesy to the host, who would remember the evening as still pleasant when it ended, rather than as something that ran too long. It required reading the room accurately and acting before personal reluctance made acting difficult. A guest who always left at the right moment was a guest who was always welcome back. A guest who stayed too long left behind a different memory. The rule was simple. It was the execution that required attention. What these 7 rules have in common is that none of them are about the woman following them. They are about the comfort and dignity of the people around her. The 1950s social codes were not primarily about impression management. They were a system designed to make social occasions work better, to protect hosts from awkwardness, to make guests feel attended to preserve the energy of an evening, so it ended on the memory of pleasure. The system worked because it was shared. Everyone in the room was following roughly the same protocols, which meant the friction was low and the pleasure was high. When the system collapsed, the friction did not go away. It simply became everyone's individual problem to manage without a framework, which is, in a social sense, what most of us are doing now. Pick 2 rules this week: the 5-minute arrival and the 24-hour note. These 2 require no explanation to anyone. No announcement of what you are doing. They are invisible to everyone except the people who benefit from them. The woman who hosted you will feel it without being able to name it. The neighbor you are thanking will put the note somewhere she keeps things. This is how the system propagated in the 1950s, not through instruction, through experience. You felt the difference, and you wanted to create it. The rules were not rules in the end. They were practices that made people feel well treated. That function does not expire. It is as available today as it was in Pasadena in 1954.